Dude.
Hello, welcome to Manon, Dejour. I'm Violet Brackman.
I'm Luke Mazer.
I'm
I'm
Sam
lost.
Power.
And today we will be talking about the 2012 American drama Flight, directed by Robert Zemeckis. The movie follows Whip, who is portrayed by Denzel Washington, who's an alcoholic pilot who manages to crash land a plane during mechanical failure. And then the movie follows him throughout the next couple of weeks after the plane crash and the criminal trials that follow. So, should we start off with what we thought about the film?
Okay, so personally, going into the film, it's a Denzel Washington movie. We're talking about star power. Obviously, I initially thought, man, this has got to be like a great movie. It's got Denzel in it. Everybody loves Denzel. And it almost lived up to the hype. Like, I thought it was a good movie. I wouldn't put it in the great category, but I definitely enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'd say something similar to what Luke said. It was not quite like in that top tier of like great all-time movies, but it was definitely a very solid, fun film to watch. And the plane crash was like had me on the edge of my seat. I was like holding my breath, and I was like, "Oh, this is really intense for like the first half hour of a movie." So I really enjoyed it. I liked watching Denzel Washington. He's always a pleasure to watch as an actor. So it was a very good movie.
So for me, I really like the movie, and I think it's hard for me to put it in the god tier realm, like the top 10 realm, because most of my top 10 are all like crazy action movies, and this was a crazy action movie, but it had a lot of like somber like moments, you know. But overall, I really liked the film. Um, I thought there was a lot of irony in it, like speckled throughout, and it actually made me tear up a few times. It's so sad. So, shout out to Denzel Washington, great performance.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of star quality. Like, I love John Goodman in it. He was so funny. The John Goodman playing the drug dealer.
He was my favorite character.
I know, it was so good. And like Don Cheadle was great in it. Denzel Washington was, so there's like a lot of star power, a lot of like recognizable faces, which I feel like made the movie really familiar. But it definitely wasn't like pushing to be like something that was like really like made you think and like kind of like messed with your like ideas and notions about something. It was like a very classical like Hollywood film, big names, a rather simple plot line that's about like morals and like civic obligations and stuff. But I thought overall it was like a really fun movie, and the plane scene was definitely a trip.
That's one of the they use that line so many times in the movie.
So let's start talking about like Denzel's star image. Obviously, he's like one of the biggest black men in Hollywood. He's like very well known. I would say that Denzel Washington is probably like a household name to a degree. So what do you guys think? How do you think that like impacts like the movie?
For me, I think that having Denzel Washington in the film just makes like, so since the star power makes me be like, oh, okay, well, where I may not have wanted to watch this movie before, now that I know Denzel Washington's in it, like maybe I want to watch it more now. And it was just much more captivating because I already had this preconceived notion that Denzel Washington is a really good actor. So in all the scenes in the movie, I couldn't help but think to myself, wow, this is like such good acting, especially in the stairwell. I couldn't even imagine filming a scene where three people are talking in a closed stairwell like that and keep it captivating, but they did that. And looking back, I think that maybe my ideas would have changed if it was a lesser known main actor, um, even if they acted to the same degree. But that was my opinion on it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think the fact that Denzel was in it, like if this came, like when this came out in 2012, I would have been like, oh yeah, I'll go see this in theaters just because it's Denzel Washington and like everyone loves Denzel because he's a great actor. And there's just that kind of like, I don't know if it's not really stereotype, but it's like that everyone wants to go see a Denzel Washington movie no matter what it is. It could be a really boring movie, but if Denzel's in it, it's going to be better because he's just a really great actor and he's beloved by everyone. It seems like so everyone's going to kind of have that like skewed opinion that it's already going to be a better movie than if it was just some other random actor. So I definitely think that when I heard Denzel was in this movie, I got a little bit more excited to watch this movie than if it was just like some random actor that I had never heard of or I'd seen maybe a couple times. So he definitely influenced the star power of Denzel definitely influences like opinions of the movie and like how people view it.
Yeah, going off
Yeah,
of what you said. Oh, sorry, Violet, you can go.
there you go. You go.
Okay, well, going off of what you said about how the star power affects people's opinions of the movie, like you want Denzel Washington's character, since he's like so beloved by all, like you said, you want him to be a great guy. And when he's not a great guy and he's like this alcoholic that's like just like pushing people away from him, it's like kind of upsetting to the audience. And like it's great, like everybody loved when he was able to save all those people because Denzel can do anything. And but after that scene, you kind of see like more of like who he is and like how he's not the guy that you want him to be.
Yeah, I also think that like Denzel Washington is one of those people who's definitely like more of a classic Hollywood like movie theater. Because when I think of like movies that you see in movie theaters, it's either like animated movies or it's like action movies. Like those are like the two things where it's like if you're going to see a movie in theaters, like action movies because you want like the surround sound and the big screen um and so like I think that Denzel Washington in his like action movies, like that plane scene was probably like amazing in theaters. And like it was probably played in the trailer and like you see this cool like plane crash in this really intense moment. So I feel like this would definitely be like a really good star image movie to like see in theaters because it's kind of like you want to see Denzel Washington and like when you see it, you see that this is like an experience to want to have like with surround sound in a theater with like a bunch of people.
I also wanted to add something onto what Luke was saying, and it was that I think that with Denzel Washington as the main character, less character development was needed, because I already had this connection with Denzel from watching his movies previously. And so in the scenes like when he found the second mini fridge, that whole entire scene was shrouded in suspense because I really, 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 really didn't want him to drink, but he ended up drinking, and that just was really sad. And I think it was amplified by the fact that it was Denzel Washington, and I had this pre-connection with him already.
Yeah, I also think that because like you know who Denzel Washington is before you go in, the fact that you don't need a lot of introduction to him makes this really good for a Hollywood movie. Something where you have like a really unknown actor who like the audience doesn't already have an established relationship with, like you have to introduce them to the point where like Denzel Washington was like the main character. We had so much time alone with him in this film. And I think you're comfortable with all that time alone with him because he seems familiar. Whereas if like you had an actor who you've like never seen in their movies before, you'd maybe be less inclined to like sit through so much time just like you watching that actor. So I think that like his star image is really important to like how much character time he has on the screen because you like feel familiar like sitting down and watching him just like live his life for so long.
I don't know about you guys, but I don't know if this has a lot to do with the star power, but when he was on trial after he was like really drunk, I was kind of, even though it was like the wrong thing to do, like I was kind of rooting for him to just kind of get out of it and like maintain his lie. I just because like I think it was, I don't know, maybe it had something to do with Denzel just being like, as we've said, kind of beloved, and just like we have that perceived image of him as like a good guy, as like the hero usually in films. And even though like I knew it was wrong that he was lying and that he was drunk, I kind of wanted him to like get out of it and like maintain his lie, even though it was immoral. And I mean, in the end, it was a good thing that he kind of fixed his life. But in the moment, I was kind of disappointed that he went for it and told the truth.
Honestly, for me, when he first walked in there and when the first questions were being asked, I was thinking the same thing along the same lines. I really didn't want him to go to jail and I wanted him to get out of it. And I was thinking to myself, Denzel, why didn't you study the brochure the night before so you know what to say when she's asking these questions? And so, but as it progressed and it started to get more down to the wire, the camera started showing the lawyer and the union president. I felt like he needed to confess, and what better place to confess than on a federal investigation bureau thing? Am I right? Yeah, because I thought it was a great tie-in because of that AA meeting. He's like, I really I couldn't lie anymore. I couldn't lie to myself anymore, and that was his breaking point. So I was happy, honestly, for him.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting when like the film started. I was definitely looking at it through like a race point of view because that's what we've like focused a lot on in this class. And like to me it made sense in Hollywood that they portrayed like the black man because like in the beginning you started out with this black man and this white woman and both of them have drug addictions. Both of them are addicts. Denzel's addicted to alcohol and she's addicted to heroin along with other things. And I just thought it was really interesting because like I personally was like mad and vilifying Denzel Washington. I mean, probably because he was also like putting the lives of everyone on the plane at stake, but he just seemed like this like sleazy guy who was like drinking, even though I knew he was gonna get on a plane and like have all these people's lives in his hands. And like he was like he wouldn't go on autopilot, even though that was the option, and he like wanted to like kind of get high off of like the dangers of the plane. And so like I was vilifying him as an addict. But then for like Nicole, when she was like getting high and like the guys were trying to make her do like the porn and she was like, I really just need to get high. And then like the landlord comes in and starts harassing her. I like felt so bad for her. And I think that's definitely like a Hollywood trope. Like, and I think that was really important to the film because I think by the time that it came around to like Denzel Washington like coming clean, going to jail, like basically like this a lot of this movie is about like the notion of like God, but like atoning for his sins basically. I think that's interesting because he fixes his star image by the end of the movie. Like he starts off the movie and you're like kind of mad at him because you're like, why are you like being a terrible human and putting everyone's lives life at stake by being drunk, and you assume that he's going to crash the plane because he's drunk, not because of engine failure. And so you're kind of already like against him. And then I think by the end, like having him have this redemption arc of like coming clean and like starting a relationship with his son again, it kind of like brings him back to like the next movie you see him, you're like, oh well, I just watched Flight, and like he was great at the end of it. Like you don't really think of him in the beginning.
I feel like this movie, okay, I'm hesitant to say the overarching message because no movie has an overarching message, but I think that like one of the themes of the movie was everything. Number one, everything happens for a reason, and life is kind of out of your control. And I think that so for the theme of life is out of your control and you can't really stop it is the alcoholism. It was he made it out to seem like it was his choice that he was drinking, but it was really the alcohol was controlling him. And also, I don't know about you, but I was kind of freaked out in the scene that he went to see his co-pilot and they're sitting in the bedroom and he was like talking and then like his girlfriend would just be like, praise Jesus, praise Jesus, like randomly. Like it kind of like freaked me out a little bit. With the whole plane crashing in the field and hitting the chapel, and there were lots of references to God. I think that it was how like in life there are the things that you try and control. You really try to control it, but it's just out of your control. And I think that was largely to do with the alcoholism.
In the stairwell scene, the guy with cancer says that like a lot about like how he got cancer. That was like God's will. It wasn't of his own free will. So that's just like another really prominent connection to what you were saying.
True.
Yeah, I think the God thing was kind of in some ways I found it was like a running joke within the movie because like they're basically like, yo, we can get you off for like manslaughter because you were like drinking on the job while flying a plane if we just say it was like God's will. And I was like, wait, what? You
Yeah.
like God let it, like God said it would happen, so it had to be. So like it doesn't matter that he's drinking. And then like when they're in the staircase, the cancer patient, he's like talking about God's will, and he's kind of saying like, I use God's will to be like, I'm like, I don't know, he kind of uses it as a way to be like, I don't know, whatever happens to me, like it doesn't really matter because God made it happen, and I'm just like, I'm so done with it. I don't even want to have like any sort of like connection to like this could possibly be me. I'm just like gonna blame it all on God and like keep going. And then especially like when they're like watching over the field when the plane crashed and all the people who are like I found it really funny that they crashed into a church in like this field, and like everyone who like was at the plane crash, they were all like praying like in that circle in the middle. It was like a circle that was like blocked off by like police tape,
Yeah.
and they were like still like getting like pieces of the plane out of the field, and people were just like praying in the middle of it. And so I thought there was like a lot of humor and comedy, like running theme of God, which was like kind of interesting.
Yeah. I thought it was funny too when they're in the stairwell and the cancer patient was like, one thing I've learned is that every last breath is precious. And he's like, can I bum the smoke off you? And like goes off like with every last of his breath, just smoking cigarettes. Like I was like, oh, okay.
I
Interesting.
also love when he takes the pack and he's like, oh, I he's out at the cancer ward. He's
Yeah,
like,
right.
he's like talking like it's candy. Like when Denzel gives him the whole pack of cigs, he's like, oh yeah, I'll pass. He's out at the cancer ward. Which is also in the
Yeah.
basement, like with no windows, I'm assuming. Like
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, they put the cancer patients in the bed. Like, sheesh, that's rough.
Yeah.
I feel like this movie definitely like portrayed trauma in interesting lights because like it's like it's clear that Nicole is like a drug addict because of her mother's cancer. And then it's interesting how like it portrays like the treatment of people with cancer. Like he's kind of like stuck in a basement. He doesn't care about his life. He's smoking cigarettes. He has no hope for the future. So I think it's like interesting how they portray addiction and kind of how everyone's addiction like kind of bounces off another person.
Yeah, like personally, I'm in love with the stairwell scene. And I think that going off of what you said about how each of their addictions like are all kind of the same in that particular scene, I think that one commonality that all these people have is that if they continue on the path that they're on, that they're going to eventually die. The cancer patient showed that even though he had cancer, he was still willing to smoke more. And I thought it was interesting how the girl, she ended up getting help because she realized that like that's not how she wanted to be, and Denzel Washington couldn't get help, and yeah, it was really sad.
Especially because in the stairwell she was talking about how like women who who like use heroin with needles are most likely to die. And so I think it's funny that like in that scene where both of them were kind of confronting death, like Denzel just had a near death experience and so did so did she. Interesting that she was like, I'm most likely going to die, yet she was the one who like immediately sought help, and like Denzel kind of like stayed like trapped in his addiction.
True. They were kind of like staring death in the face too with that cancer patient there. Like how he's saying how he was pretty much, people thought he had special powers because he was right on the brink of death, life and death. And yeah, it's kind of interesting how like they were able to see death in front of them, but one was able to make that connection and the other wasn't. What are some questions we have?
Well, we talked about this briefly before, how star image is definitely, we talked about this in class too, like affected by like by our morals and kind of like our compass on like how we feel about actors. And it's a lot up to the media to decide like what actors are like good and what actors are bad. And like we talked about how like Denzel Washington has had a couple of um, affairs that have come out in the media and been talked about. And I think that it's interesting that like those affairs coming out in the media definitely didn't taint him as much as I feel like some other people did. Like I feel like we still look at Denzel Washington as like a good guy. Him and his wife have been together for like 30 something years, and like they're looked at as like a very like loving couple who's like very big in like public image as like a like kind of an it couple. And I think that's really interesting, like how he like has had these affairs and we still like look at him as like we kind of put him on a pedestal as such like an amazing person and an amazing actor.
That fact
Yeah.
definitely like skews, I feel like the audience's image of him like in the movie. Like I feel like Denzel usually has a really good performance, but I feel like he could have a bad performance and people would still love the movie and love Denzel for that like movie because he's put on that pedestal and like the media portrays him as in like a better light.
I definitely agree with you
Yeah,
on
I was just talking about like Army Hammer, how like he You want to go, Lawson?
No, you're good. You're
Oh.
good. Sorry.
We were just talking about like how Armie Hammer, like he was found out for having like affair with his like castmate, and now like people are like, you weren't the good guy I thought you were. And maybe that's because like his kind of stardom is more around people like wanting to like marry him and wanting to be with him, and then they feel like if like the actor does something that's kind of like messed up, that they wouldn't see themselves in a relationship, they get mad at the actor. But I guess maybe like Denzel Washington doesn't have like this kind of thing of like he's like a heartthrob who everyone wants to marry. And so like when you see Denzel Washington having an affair, it's like less of like a thing that like changes your point of view on him.
True.
It might be like a younger generation, like people who are like older generation, like Denzel Washington's like a heartthrob.
You don't think Denzel Washington is a heartthrob, Violet?
Well, I mean, he's kind of like 50 years older than me, so I don't know. Kind of a big age gap.
Age is but a number.
Another thing that I thought was like interesting was like their portrayal of like his family life. Like he was like the black father who's like not there in his child's life, and his kid is being raised by like a single mother. And then we look at like Nicole's life, and she was also raised by a single mother, and I think their racial differences really changed the way we look at that. Like I definitely think the fact that they were like he's essentially like in the role that like Nicole's father was in. And so we kind of see like how it affected Nicole, which I definitely think probably played a part on like Denzel's character. Like the fact that he's like meeting this woman who talks about like my mother like died of cancer, I had no one there, and I became a heroin addict because my father wasn't around. And I feel like that definitely must have affected him, being like, I'm not around for my son, and if like his mother dies and like I'm not there, like what is that going to mean for him too, which I thought was like interesting because there's kind of like multiple aspects. There's like the racial aspect of it in society, but then there's also kind of this like character realization for like Whip about like what it means to like be a child.
I feel like one of the most powerful scenes in this whole movie was when there was a close shot of Denzel right after his son said the title of his essay for college, which that was very sad. But Denzel was able to create this look in his eyes that I feel like only somebody who's experienced the trauma of being an alcoholic and having everyone pushed away from you and growing up without a mother and a father early on in life could replicate. And I thought that was a beautiful scene. And also, Violet, you mentioned before this discussion about how minority populations such as African Americans make up the majority of people in prison in the United States. And I was wondering if you wanted to elaborate on that and its pertinence in Flight.
Yeah, in some ways I felt like at the end of the movie when like he was in jail, I guess by the end of it you like kind of like we talked about like you kind of don't want him to confess. Like you're happy for his character because you feel like his character is kind of like freed now from the traps of like alcoholism that he was in, but at the same time you kind of want him to like just lie and like get out. And like that like in the end when he was in jail I was like kind of disappointed because I felt like it was kind of like I don't know how to put it. I guess I would say it best as like Nicole was kind of like saved by the system as like a white woman. Like she had people who like came to her for AA and were like, can we help you like work the steps? And like she was kind of like helped by the system. And I feel like Denzel Washington wasn't helped by the system. And I think that it made me frustrated when he ended up in jail because I feel like jail wasn't the place for him. I feel like rehabilitation was, and like that made me upset at the end because I saw it as like this is like the largest group who are imprisoned and majority of them aren't for offenses I think that should put you in jail. And so like I was kind of mad like Nicole got to choose rehabilitation and like he got jail, which is not rehabilitation, even though like he kind of came to like new understandings by like going to prison.
I mean, his actions were probably worse than what Nicole did, like flying a plane under the influence like that. But I get your point, definitely. And one thing I would say is when they find the alcohol bottles in the trash, you kind of already know like he's not gonna throw I forget what her name was, but the flight attendant that like he was like in a relationship with, you knew he would never throw her under the bus. And like maybe it's just like hindsight bias or whatever because it's Denzel, you know he's gonna like fess up and be like, yeah, it's me. Like as soon as they find those bottles.
Yeah, I definitely think adding on to your point of like the fact that like he was definitely doing things that were like more dangerous than Nicole. I guess it's kind of like looking at it from the point of view of like, you know, that the plane crash wasn't because he was drinking. Like, you know that like it was an act of God. Yeah, like you know that the plane crash wasn't because he was drinking. So I think looking at it at the end of the film where it's like if he was drinking or not on that flight, the same things would have occurred probably. Like I don't think that it would have happened any different. I don't really know. So I think that like looking at that, it like makes it less of an issue, I guess, that he was like drinking on the flight and like had people's lives in his hands because like you know that no matter what happened, he would have always saved those people and they like never would have died because of the alcohol.
I have a question for you guys. Do you think that if he hadn't been drinking, that he would have been able to do the same thing? Or do you think since he was drunk, he was able to do this like crazy thing? And how that is impacted
superpower to flip the plane upside down.
invert the plane.
The co-pilot was like, flip the plane.
Flip the plane.
I don't know how he stayed like so calm in that scene. Any pilot I feel like would have been freaking out, especially one that's like high on cocaine at the time. Like I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like it was just like a rush for him. Like he was like enjoying it to some degree.
Yeah.
Because like you definitely saw like when he gets on the plane, he like huffs, like he like takes the oxygen mask and like huffs the oxygen.
What?
And then like when he's going through like the clouds in the beginning, like the storm, you can tell that he's like it's like a game. Like so I feel like in some ways that was just like his messed up like brain being like, yeah. Like I feel like if he wasn't like on drugs and like drunk, he probably would have been a lot more freaked out. But like because he was an addict, I think that it was just like the addiction to like the adrenaline sorry, I keep losing my voice, the adrenaline rush that like made him able to like make those decisions like clear-minded and just be like, okay, let's flip the plane. Like we gotta get level. We can't keep going down. How long have we been, Sam?
I think we're about half an hour in.
Oh.
Yeah.
Do we want to do like closing statements? Do we have anything else do we want to talk about any of like the other characters? Like maybe like who, like John Goodman's character based on like what we know him in, or like Don Cheadle's character.
I don't know. I feel like Don Cheadle's character played a kind of a typical, like that was kind of like a typical role for him in some ways. Um, I mean, I only know him from like the Marvel movies, but he's always been like that kind of like good guy, very like precise, like um, he's not like a rebel or anything, like doing like crazy things. He's like in the Marvel movies, he works for like the army or something, and now he's a lawyer. So he's a very like good, straight, level-headed person in both cases. So I felt like that was kind of typical for him. I don't think he has much of a broad range in some ways.
Yeah, I was a little mad at his character though. I kind of wanted, I was kind of mad that his character was like a little bit like dirty and a little bit slimy and kind of like trying to brush off something illegal.
Mm-hmm.
Which I feel like from like the Marvel movies isn't really him. He's more of like a moral compass in like the Iron Man movies.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I was like a little bit like frustrated because I was like, you're supposed to be like a nice guy who like cares about people, but like you're kind of just like, I'll do anything to like like get my employers like acquitted of like whatever they're being charged of.
What else has John Goodman been in?
He's in a bunch of things. He's in Big Lebowski. He's in 10 Cloverfield. I can check.
There's one big movie that I can't remember that he's in that's so good.
Mm-hmm.
He's in Argo. He's in Monsters University.
Oh.
He plays James P. Sullivan. Which is also a thing. I think it's interesting, like the difference of like star power when you're a voice actor versus being a live actor. Because I feel like John Goodman, when I think of John Goodman, I definitely think of like more like this was a role where I was like, yeah, like I totally get this. I totally see this.
Totally.
But like when I see John Goodman, I don't think of Sully from Monsters Inc. And like I don't feel like that like tainted Sully, because I feel like star power for like voice actors are so removed from their actual characters that like I feel like you could have like someone that like plays a villain in like in live action movies and then have them like play like some really sweet character in like an animated film, and I like wouldn't, that like star power wouldn't transfer over.
True. I think that star power had a huge influence on Goodman's role in Flight, because it was just so on point for how I would have expected John Goodman to play that role, to the way he was walking, like the way he carried himself, the way he, like, especially the second time he came into the movie when he saved the day and he was the hero. that had me reeling. That was so funny.
That was one of my favorite scenes.
He like came in and he was like, oh, you don't know how to get a drunk person to be sober? Of course, you just give them like snort cocaine in each nostril and then like take a little bit of the cigarette out. And I was like, what is happening?
Yeah, he was like acting like a doctor, like being so professional.
2cc stat.
yes.
And then like when he came in to like to bring the stuff to Whip, and he like gives him like the nude magazines and like alcohol, and I'm like,
Yes.
he just like survived a plane crash, and like your like get better, feel better thing is like Red Bull's vodka and like magazines.
Yeah. Yeah. So funny.
Like there
And-
was definitely like a big release of like tension for the film, like his character.
oh, totally, totally. And I feel like if any other, like, obviously there are actors out there that would play that role really good, but he was like spot on. But
Yeah.
if it was just some random actor, I feel like it wouldn't have been as funny, you
Oh
know?
yeah, totally.
Like,
Because when he shows up at like the desk and he's like,
it's like,
I'm on the list or whatever, I was like, no way. I was like, this is so like
I
I
like
love
how
that
they
everywhere he goes, he's like, my name's down. Like when he goes to the hotel room, he's like, my name's on the list. I'm like, what list? It's just like a bodyguard at a hotel room.
yeah. I think the movie that he's in as well is Oh Brother Where Art Thou. Is
Oh, is he
he
really?
the big guy that tries to con them? Do you know what I'm talking? Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Have you seen Oh Brother Where Art Thou?
I don't remember the.
Check. I can
I
check.
think.
I don't remember. Maybe he
Have any of
might
you read
be.
The Odyssey?
Oh
Yes,
yeah, I read
yes.
the Odyssey.
He is. So he
Yeah.
portrays the
Oh,
it's the same. He acts the same exact way as he does in Oh Brother Where Art Thou in this movie. He plays this sleazy salesman, Bible salesman, and he's like, and this is the best Bibles in the land, and oh, praise Jesus, and here we go. Like just the same way.
Was he in the clip that we watched during class?
I don't think so.
no, he wasn't.
No. And then he ends up being this like, he ends up conning them. And it's just like funny. He's like, "Thank you, boys. I'll be on my way." Like, "Thank you for the coin." It's classic Goodman. Yeah.
He's in like a bunch of animated films. He's in the B movie Princess and the Frog,
What?
Emperor's New Groove, The Flintstones.
Does he play the princess in Princess and the Frog?
Definitely recognized
Um,
his voice. Like as soon as I saw him, like I heard his voice, I was like, I recognize that from some movie. I couldn't place which one, but
Yeah.
yeah, but I just think that's interesting how like we so do not correlate him with any of his like voice acting movies. Only like we only think of him as like a comedy guy from all these like other movies.
His appearance is
Like,
just so
Cloverfield
striking.
Lane, he's not really a comedy guy.
Yeah, true. He's like, oh. Well, are there any closing remarks you all have about Flight? Like a little wrap up?
I think overall it was like a fun movie. I feel like it had a good like story arcs, good like character redemption. Like when the film ended, like every character kind of like redeemed themselves in some way. Like I feel like his friend, I forgot his name, he was like trying to get it. He was like, you have to be sober, like with like he told the truth. I also thought the scene where they're at the AA meeting was really funny because like the guy was like narrating literally what Whip was doing in his AA speech. He was like, they'll make me walk, or as he's like walking out the door. But like overall I thought it was like a really fun movie.
Yeah, I agree. Like the beginning, especially, was so gripping during the plane crash, like we said previously, and the redemption at the end definitely helped, or like was definitely within Denzel's wheelhouse, what you would expect for him to do. So I thought it was a little predictable. That's why I said it was a good movie, not great, but it was solid. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a very good movie. Denzel did a good job portraying a very stubborn alcoholic man, and he had a great performance. I also love John Goodman in it. Um, and I thought it also fit well with like the theme of race in class, because it kind of portrayed that like almost like stereotypical like single mom and the black son and like a black man, and he ends up going to jail and he has problems, but he ends up figuring it out. So I thought it fit well with like the themes of race that we've discussed previously in class. So I thought it was a good movie. Like Luke said, though, not quite like a top tier.
Yeah, I think that we can all clearly take away that this is like a very classic Hollywood blockbuster. And I think in some ways um, it does kind of appeal to a lot of stereotypes that are dangerous to minorities. And I think that in some ways it also kind of like doesn't really take away realistic to life. But like it's a fun movie, which is what Hollywood movies aim to do. And it like makes you feel good about yourself kind of at the end, where everyone's like kind of has this like happy redemption. But I think like we can definitely say that this is like a movie theater blockbuster.
Definitely. I think for me, the number one thing about this film was how beautifully it captured alcoholism. This was the only film I felt that accurately captured what it's like. Not that I have experience, but what it, like how it allowed me to relate to the alcoholic in the movie, and it made me realize that they have good intentions, but it's just the drink just has got its hands on them, so you can't get away. But yeah, I thought it was a good movie.
Yeah, I wish it had, as you said, Violet, it was a typical like blockbuster Hollywood movie. I wish it had dealt a little bit more with, like, I know it was about like drugs and addiction and stuff and alcohol, but I wish it had dealt a little more with like race and like themes, gone a little deeper with race and not just been so stereotypical. I think that could have made it a little bit of a better
Yeah,
movie.
I definitely feel like this film like profits on stereotypes, which is
Mhm.
like it's what Hollywood does.
Yeah.
And I also think that like if this movie was like less Hollywood, like Denzel Washington and I keep forgetting her name. Uh the woman, like neither of them would have been able to like that easily get over their addiction just by like, I want to be a good person now. I feel like it would have been a lot more pessimistic in the end. And like I think that it kind of would have been like she was like a heroin addict and like could just get clean in like a week
Yeah, that kind
of
of
like
bothered
taking
me
like
in some ways. Like she was just like done like with heroin, and I was like, I don't think that's how it works.
yeah, like
No,
she had no withdrawals or anything. It
No.
was kind of just like, yeah, I have a sponsor now and I'm clean.
Yeah.
had a
Um
job,
yeah,
and I
and
think
I feel like that doesn't accurately portray like how grueling it is like to get clean and like stay sober and like it's a constant battle for the rest of your life.
totally.
Like you're never like it's a disease, it's not like something you can get over, you have it for the rest of your life. And so I feel like in that ways that's like what makes this movie aims to tie up alcoholism and drug addiction with like a neat bow and be like if you just like look within yourself and like find that like your human morality, you'll be able to like get past it, where I feel like that isn't always the case.
All right. Anyone else have anything they need to say or on our last episode?
We love you.
Thank you for this class, and thank you for coming to see Manon Dejour.